Hello everybody, Calamity here, at least that's what the patch notes say. In today's video, I'm going to show you how to build Kuki Shinobu in a Hyperbloom team. This is easily going to be her strongest team comp. You can, however, also build her in an Aggravate team as well. I'll show you how to do both. It should be noted that just because we're building Kuki Shinobu for Hyperbloom or Aggravate, that does not mean we're neglecting her healing at all. In fact, she'll still be a solid healer and she'll be able to definitely keep your team alive. I'm going to go over everything you need to know about this character, from talents, weapon options, artifact recommendations, team setups, constellations, and finally a combat and support showcase at the very end. We have a lot to cover, so let's get started. So first things first, we have the normal attack talent, Shinobu's Shadow Sword. This is a very standard normal attack talent. It does not have any sort of fancy mechanics or anything to it. It looks really cool, but unfortunately we're not going to be using it, or at least we're not going to be leveling it because we don't need for the normal attacks to do damage. You will, however, sometimes use it when you're using Kuki Shinobu with someone like Jincho or Yolan in order to proc their bursts. So let's talk about what you do need to bother with, and that is going to be the elemental skill. This is called the Sanctifying Ring, and as the name suggests, Kuki Shinobu is going to summon a ring around herself. This ring is going to continuously heal your active character as well as apply electro damage to nearby opponents. It also should be noted that this skill eats up her own HP every time you use it. In fact, it eats up 30% of your current HP, not your max HP. Also, something important to note is that this HP consumption cannot kill you. It'll bring your HP down to 20%, but you can never accidentally die from using her own elemental skill. If we look at the attributes, we can see the healing is once again based off the character's max HP plus a base of 542. There's the activation cost, the duration of 12 seconds, and a cooldown of 15 seconds. This skill is the cream of the crop. It's the best part about her kit because not only does it heal you, which is nice, but this is the reason why we're able to set off the Dendro cores that we're going to be making in a Hyperbloom team in order to do damage. This ring will persist on field even when Kuki Shinobu is not the active character, so you're constantly applying Electro to set off the Dendro cores for big damage. And that's what makes this skill so good. In fact, that's the whole reason why Kuki Shinobu is one of the best Hyperbloom options that you have. Now let's move on to the burst. For Kuki's burst, she's going to stab the ground, and in an AoE, a bunch of Electro damage is going to be applied. This burst has a longer duration if Kuki Shinobu has less than half her health, which is very easy to achieve thanks to her elemental skill. However, that being said, the skill or the burst itself doesn't actually do a lot of damage. We can see here that it is based off her HP, which on paper sounds good because, we're building a lot of HP for her heals and maybe it'll do a lot of damage. In reality, not so much. It doesn't really do that much damage. You can use it for a big burst of Electro, basically to set off a bunch of Dendro cores that might not be near enough for you to set off with your ring. It's okay, but again, we're not building like heavy energy recharge like what we would do with other support characters in order to consistently burst off cooldown. We don't have to do that with Kuki Shinobu, which is actually kind of nice. The energy cost on it is 60, so yeah, even less energy recharge is needed. You can increase the level of the burst if you so choose to, but it's definitely not a requirement or necessary for Hyperbloom comps, that is. So let's move on to the Ascension talents. We have Breaking Free and Heart's Repose. Breaking Free is pretty simple. When Kuki Shinobu is below 50% of her HP, she will gain a healing bonus of 15%, which is really nice and easy to achieve. Next up is going to be Heart's Repose, which is going to increase your healing and your damage dealt based off your elemental mastery. This is fine and dandy because that is exactly what we're doing when building Kuki Shinobu's artifacts and choosing a weapon for her. We're just going to try to get as much elemental mastery as we can, therefore we're going to get good value out of this talent, but unfortunately this talent just isn't that crazy as it sounds. Yes, he'll do some more healing, but it's not like a huge increase, or same with the damage. It's only going to be very, very small. Next up, we have Protracted Prayers, which is going to increase the rewards you get from doing an Inazuma expedition for 20 hours. That's actually a nice passive talent there that I definitely use for my expeditions. Now let's move on to weapons. When building a Hyperbloom Kuki Shinobu, your weapon options are actually really easy. I can definitely recommend just going for an Iron Sting if you have nothing else. This is a weapon you can craft as early as Mondstadt, I believe. This is literally the perfect weapon. It has a substat of Elemental Mastery, which is exactly what we need. If, for whatever reason, you're looking for alternatives, let's show you some alternatives. If you were around to play Genshin a few updates ago, then you were able to get this weapon, the Tokubo Shigure. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce this weapon correctly. This also has the same amount of Elemental Mastery as a substat. Unfortunately, the weapon's effect does not apply to Hyperbloom damage and therefore doesn't work for her there. It's a bit unfortunate, otherwise it would also be a very solid option. Next up, we have the Xiphos Moonlight. This is also another weapon that has Elemental Mastery as a substat, and then it converts that Elemental Mastery into Energy Recharge. It's a good option again for Kuki Shinobu, but again, Energy Recharge is not really something you really need. It's nice to have, don't get me wrong, but it's not a must-have. Now for 5-star options, if you are whaling or you're planning to whale for a good weapon here, in the upcoming Kazuha banner, the Freedom Sworn Sword is going to be definitely the best weapon you can get for your Kuki Shinobu. It provides Elemental Mastery, a really strong buff on the weapon effect, and it's just perfect. Another option will be Nilo Signature Weapon. If you have that from past polls for whatever reason, you could slap that onto your Kuki Shinobu. Now let's talk artifacts. For Hyperbloom, really easy. You're going to need to run all the way to Sumeru, specifically in the desert area, to get to the Flower of the Paradise Lost domain. This is where we get the best in-slot artifact set for Hyperbloom teams. This set essentially just increases Hyperbloom damage by 80%, which is insane. Also gives you additional Elemental Mastery. Now, if you're like, whoa, I'm not there yet. What can I get beforehand? You can give your Kuki Shinobu an Instructor set, which is a 4-star artifact set that basically does Elemental Mastery. It just gives you a bunch of Elemental Mastery for free. So that's one early game option. You could also just give Kuki Shinobu like a 2-piece Wanderer's Troop and like a 2-piece something else, at least early on, until you get to this domain. Now for Aggravate players, your set is going to be the Gilded Dreams set. This one just straight up gives you a bunch of Elemental Mastery or attack percentage depending on what element your teammates are. There is one more artifact set that I can recommend, but it's only going to be if you want to purely build Kuki Shinobu as only as a support, not as a trigger for elemental reaction teams. And that's going to be the Tenacity of the Millilith. She can provide her team with a 20% attack buff as well as a shield strength increase. So depending on what team you want to use her on, this is a very solid set for support Shinobu. But I'm not doing that. I just thought I'd mention it for those that do want to build her as a pure support. For me, I am doing Flower of Paradise Lost. So whichever set you decide to go for, let's talk about the subsets that you want to look for on your artifacts. And that is going to be Elemental Mastery. That's right, you want Elemental Mastery on everything, either as a substat or as a main stat. So obviously for the Flower and the Feather, we can't get Elemental Mastery as a main stat, so we want it as a sub. You're going to want to look for either HP percentage or flat HP. Both are good, but definitely HP percentage more. This is how we don't neglect our Kuki's healing capabilities, excuse me. So she'll still be able to dish out solid healing as long as we keep giving her more HP. The fourth subset that I recommend looking for is going to be Energy Recharge. You don't really need it, like I said before, just a couple of it. If you do happen to get on your substats, that's fine. Alright, let's talk about main stats for all three. For the Sands, Goblet, and the Circlet. I'm sure you can figure it out. It's going to be Elemental Mastery. I think the hardest part about building Kuki's artifacts is just finding the main stat of Elemental Mastery on all three. Alright, let's move on to Constellations for Kuki, and as you can see, I have quite a few myself since I pulled a lot on the, I believe she was on the Shenhe banner, and I was trying to pull for her there, and I definitely got a lot of Constellations for her. But let's talk about what they actually do. So C1 isn't that great for us. It's just going to increase the AoE of her burst. I mean, it's nice, don't get me wrong. It's now going to be a much bigger circle. It doesn't necessarily increase her Hyperbloom damage, which is what we care about. However, C2 on paper sounds pretty basic, right? It's going to increase our elemental skill by 3 seconds. That might not sound like much, but that's actually pretty nice. It basically ensures that our elemental skill is able to be up all the time. Now, just to give you a quick demonstration, remember that the elemental skill has, by default, a duration of 12 seconds, cooldown of 15. With C2, the duration and the cooldown actually match. So we're gonna pop the skill here. I'm kind of blocking it a little bit. I'm gonna try to move my head, but you can see behind me that the cooldown and the ring should be, like, again, just in sync basically. So cooldown is up, and then you can see our skill is ready to go, and so is, and then the ring actually lasted a little bit longer than the cooldown. So yeah, basically C2 just makes it so that you basically have the ring up all the time. So C3 and C5 are going to increase your skill and burst respectively. Getting the increase in the skill is nice. That just means more healing for us, which is great. C4 is going to be called to sever ceiling. This one's alright. Basically, when the ring is up, you will hit enemies with a Thundergrass mark. This is sort of off-field Kuki Shinobu electro application, which is nice. It does some damage based off her max HP. The fact that we have the ring up all the time, you know, that's our electro. That's more than enough electro application than we'll ever need. But hey, I guess I shouldn't say no to even more electro application. C6 is actually a really nice one. Basically, when Kuki Shinobu's HP falls below 25%, which is something you can do from her skill, using her skill a lot, you will gain 150 elemental mastery for 15 seconds, and this can be triggered once every 60 seconds. Really nice big boost in damage here. Alright, let's talk team setups for your Kuki Shinobu, and this is what a basic Hyperbloom team will look like. But honestly, it doesn't have to be exactly this. You have the option to use whatever you want. So for Hyperbloom, what you need is Hydro and Dendro to mix, right? To make those Dendro cores, and then you need Electro to touch the Dendro cores to set off Hyperbloom. With Kuki Shinobu, you've got your Electro needs covered. Seriously, you do not need to bring another Electro on this team like Fischl or Raiden Shogun. You're good. What you need depends on you and how much application you can get of the other elements. So Jincho's is a really solid Hydro applicator because of his burst. Dendro might be a little lacking depending on who you have. I have Dendro main character who's fine, but if for whatever reason you feel like you don't have enough Dendro, that 4th slot where Yao Yao is standing right now, that's definitely your flex slot. So, you know, use whatever element you feel like you're lacking. If you need another Hydro character, maybe you could put in Barbara or something. Or if you want, you know, maybe you don't even need any more elemental application. You could bring in Zhongli for shields, or you can bring in Layla as well for some sort of freeze hyperfridge thing to go along with this team. Like, honestly, the options are unlimited on what you can do for Hyperbloom. It all depends on what characters you got and what characters are built. But yeah, any iteration of this, as long as you have an Electro, a Hydro applicator, a Dendro applicator, you're good to go. Now for Aggravate teams, this team might look a little daunting because there's like a bunch of 5-stars on it. You don't have to have this exact team. But this is what an Aggravate team would look like. Nahida is here because she's one of the best Dendro applicators on the team, or in the game. Kazuha is here for the swirling of the electro damage to provide even more damage amplification. And then Kuki is here to just basically proc Aggravate, which she can do with her skill, making your Kaching do as much damage as possible. So this is what your Aggravate team would look like. Now, obviously, again, you can mix and match depending on what you don't or do have. So if you don't use Kaching, say you're going to pull for Al-Haytham on his banner, then that would be your main DPS, or Raiden Shogun, or Yaimiko, like anybody, whoever you choose as your main DPS. Just make sure you got a nice mixture of Dendro and Electro to consistently proc Aggravate, and you'll definitely have your Electro needs covered. Lastly, if you are deciding to build Kuki in a support team, I'm sure you already have a team in mind with that, so I feel like I don't have to give you an example. You know, she'll be a solid healer, you know, no matter who you want to pair her up with. Maybe you want to put her with Eula for Superconduct or something like that. That's absolutely fine. Alright, we're in my favorite domain once again to showcase this team. Now you might have noticed a slight change that I made. Oh, they saw me. We replaced Yao Yao with Kali, and the reason why I did this is because I want to showcase Shinobu's healing and her capabilities to keep a team alive without additional healers. So let's actually start fighting. Let's use the Traveler's skill here to get our burst. Then we want Jincho's burst next. Then we apply the ring, and then you can see tons of Hyperbloom text. And the nice thing about Hyperbloom is you don't have to aim it, right? Because all the seeds will automatically target the nearest enemy. So we can use Kali as well, just to get even more Dendro application. I have Favonius weapons on both Traveler and Kali, so we want to do normal attacks with them if we can, so that we are getting their weapon effects to go off for more energy. And that energy is mostly going to them, since I need— oops, I missed my elemental skill there. The elemental energy is going to them because they need it more than anyone else. Alright, we're still getting some Hyperblooms, which is nice. I need Jingcho's burst up again, though. And you can see that her healing is, you know, we're doing healthy against these wolves who would bypass shields and stuff like that and do a lot of passive damage. So we're going to do both bursts here. Make sure we reapply that ring. You can even pop the burst if you want to, just to get some extra Hyperblooms in there. Yeah, you can see we're just pretty much doing the same rotation over and over again. Once the Dendro characters have their bursts up, we use them. We make sure Jingcho has his burst up. Make sure that ring is up. And that is definitely okay that Shinobu's health is low, right? Because we want her to get that healing boost. And she can definitely get that thanks to the wolves and her elemental skill. Do the thing again. One more, and we are done. Alright, let's actually do a boss showcase now. We'll go up against this long name of a boss fight. And we'll get the Hyperbloom set up just like we did before. Get even more Dendro in there. And as you can see, Hyperbloom just does so much damage that we just deleted the boss fight in mere seconds. So before we round off this guide, I just want to say a couple words about Kuki Shinobu, and a couple words about, in case you're wondering why I don't do showcases in the Spiral Abyss. First of all, the Spiral Abyss is hard, because when I do these showcases, my goal is to try to talk you through the process of how the rotation and how the team works when you're using the character that I'm talking about. In Spiral Abyss, I have like no time to talk. Like, I'm focused on trying to not die. And the thing is with Spiral Abyss, at least the current iteration of it right now, is that we have those consecrated beasts on Chamber 1. Those things do a ton of damage. So you could have the best team, have the best dodging skills, you know, all these cracked out artifacts, weapons, whatever. You mess up a couple times against those beasts, they will destroy your HP in seconds. Even with a team like that. And it's so frustrating when I'm trying to explain stuff or just show stuff and just to have my team die. And like, you know, I know it's a skill issue, blah, 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 but I really just want to be able to just freely talk without having to worry about my team, like, having to dodge and make sure, like, you know, I'm beating the thing on time and stuff like that. Plus, I also have to do a second half, which takes a lot of time. You know, I'm not here to showcase the Spiral Abyss entirely. I'm just here to show you the team and how it works. Now that that's out of the way, Kuki Shinobu, solid healer. I forgot to mention, you probably saw that like during the entirety of the domain fighting. Maybe the boss didn't really attack us because it's just a gigantic paperweight, but during the domain you saw that the healing provided by her elemental skill was enough to keep— they definitely were just in the upper half of their HP bars, which is good enough for me. Hers is the only one that went down just from us constantly using the skill, but that's okay because Kuki Shinobu's field time should honestly be like 5 seconds, if that. The only time it goes longer is if you decide to use her burst, or I'm trying to use Jingcho's burst and get some extra hydro application there. But with a team like this, and with 2 people using Favonius weapons, it's better to use the Dendro characters than Shinobu. And Hyperbloom itself does insane amounts of damage, and it makes her really easy to build when it comes to artifacts, because you're just looking for elemental mastery, and then some HP, which you can definitely easily get. I would say the only thing that's annoying or like really hard to do with Kuki Shinobu is ascend her. But the good thing about it is that at least you only have to do this once, right? So like you need to grab the Spectre materials, which can be annoying to farm because of the low drop rate. Naku weeds, I guess these aren't too bad. There's definitely plenty of them around Inazuma. But then you also need to have the chasm unlocked so you can get these runic things. And now you're kind of getting spread out all around the place, and it's definitely annoying to deal with, right? So I would say that's the worst part about building your Shinobu, but once that's out of the way and you get the artifact pieces, Hyperbloom is going to carry you. It's insanely strong. There's a reason why it's used so much in Spiral Abyss. And with that being said, that is going to do it for this guide. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this was helpful to somebody. If you have any questions at all about Kuki Shinobu, or if you feel like I missed something, feel free to leave a comment down below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And with that being said, leave a like and subscribe if you like the content. I need to remind y'all to do that more often. And I'll see you in the next video.